Alright guys, Drake is back, he's ready to attack, and if I was Kendrick Lamar, I would be terrified right now. Drake just dropped 3 new records and he buried Kendrick Lamar alive, making us all forget about Not Like Us, Euphoria, forget all that garbage. Kendrick Lamar is gonna have to go back into hiding after all the songs Drake just put out. And just like Drake's career in 2024, this was an absolute joke. I'm kidding, alright? Drake definitely did respond to the beef in these records, but this is not what we needed to hear. This is not what Drake needed to do to make that comeback that he's been desperately trying to do for the last few months. These records, while they're not bad, and he does sound confident, it's another play to add to the list of many wrong moves that Drake has made since Kendrick Lamar handed him that L back in May. And all I could say is he's playing a dangerous game here because based on the way he's talking on some of these records, it's definitely going to trigger Kendrick Lamar to kick off the second round of this massive beef and really show Drake that he probably didn't learn his lesson the first time. He's playing a dangerous game here with all the disses he's throwing out on these records, and of course we're going to break each and every one of them down. We're going to go through all the lyrics, understand the subliminal shots that Drake was taking here, and we're going to break down what these records will actually do for Drake's career in the long term and how Kendrick is going to respond to this. But before we jump into everything, I got a little quiz for you guys. I got a question for you. What do Drake and Kendrick Lamar have in common? Drop a comment if you know the answer and stick around to the end of the video for my answer.
There's a lot of little nuggets in both of their disses that if it wasn't for these breakdowns, and salute to, guys like this, Rapaholics, because I think they directly get it.
So first we got to talk about the way that Drake released all these records. Ever since this beef happened and Kendrick broke all the streaming records on Spotify, Drake has basically abandoned streaming platforms, claiming that they're trying to conspire against him by basically blacklisting his music and trying to boost Kendrick's numbers by putting him on every single playlist. Because if you look at the numbers, Drake's diss tracks in the whole beef, Family Matters and Push-Ups, got streamed way less than any Kendrick Lamar diss track that was released. Kendrick also took Drake's crown as the rapper with the most monthly listeners on Spotify, and Drake has always been known as the numbers guy, so if that perception that he can't chart as well as he used to becomes the main narrative, then it only emphasizes the damage that Kendrick has done to Drake's career and shows that we may be witnessing a really big fall off. So instead, Drake has been releasing all his new music on this new Instagram account called Plot Twist. He's now put out 14 records since the beef ended with Kendrick Lamar's Not Like Us record, and he's releasing them all on Instagram in a way to kind of avoid actually officially releasing them on streaming platforms because of the risk of them not streaming well and then it looks like he's flopping. I gotta say though, it is crazy because anytime Drake would release 14 records, anytime before this beef ever happened, it would be a massive event in hip-hop. People would be talking about it, they would do crazy numbers, the songs would be playing everywhere, it'd leave a huge impact. Even his throwaway album, Dark Lane Demo Tapes, which was just a collection of a bunch of loosies, even that project did over 2 billion streams on Spotify, which is more than most of our favorite rappers' highest selling projects. So for Drake to release 14 new records since May, since Kendrick Lamar released Not Like Us, and for none of them to have any real impact, whether it's on the charts, whether it's just people bumping them consistently, whether it's in the clubs, whether it's them receiving critical acclaim, for all these records to just kind of come and go, it's something that we've never seen from Drake before. And it's a dark sign for what's to come within his career, at least on a commercial level. And from a critic standpoint, I believe that's why he's releasing the songs on this Instagram account instead of officially releasing them on streaming platforms. He wants to avoid any sort of criticism or make it seem like he's trying to make this grand comeback. Instead, he just nonchalantly releases them on Instagram, kind of packages them as like throwaways. That way fans don't hold these records to such a high standard and it doesn't seem like he's either flopping or dropping terrible comeback records. And I do want to emphasize again that these records that he just released aren't necessarily bad. It's just not what he needs to make that comeback that he's looking for. And he's playing a very dangerous game by sending these very petty, surface level, subliminal sneak disses. So the first record he released on this Instagram account was called No Face. He's doing his best Playboi Carti feature on this record. When the record first dropped, right away I was like, wow, he's really trying to sound like Playboi Carti here. And then sure enough, we get a Playboi Carti feature on the record. And it's just funny because obviously Kendrick Lamar was calling Drake out for using Atlanta artists or hits or to tap into their sound and style, and Kendrick called Drake a colonizer for doing so. Meanwhile, all these new records that Drake has been dropping have featured Atlanta artists, which in my opinion is Drake trying to troll Kendrick, but really it just looks like Drake is trying to show the world, look, I really do have friends in Atlanta, these guys really do like me, and I'm not a colonizer. So on the first verse of this record, Drake raps, guys got lit off the features I skated on, I gotta know how you get lit off the guy that you're hating on, numbers untouchable, they got the data wrong. Here he's basically referencing the fact that a lot of the guys who now have beef with Drake, like Rick Ross, Future, Metro Boomin, The Weeknd, a lot of them received their biggest hits ever from collaborations they did with Drake. And him saying numbers untouchable, they got the data wrong, could be a reference to the fact that he's been accusing Spotify of kind of playing with his numbers or maybe blacklisting him, while at the same time trying to push Kendrick's numbers. It's also been rumored that Kendrick was buying fake streams just to prop up the success of his single. But I think all in all here, this is one of the first bars of many that make Drake sound like he's out of touch with what's going on right now. Like, yeah, a lot of the guys who now hate you got their biggest hits from working with you, but hey, it's not like you were solely responsible for their careers. Guys like The Weeknd, even though you put him on initially, he left your label to go on to do amazing and way bigger things without you than with you. Then guys like Future, Rick Ross, or A$AP Rocky, yeah, they all have some of their biggest hits from collaborating with you, but at the same time, they have amazing projects and big songs that don't feature you at all. And more importantly, I think the days of the Drake stimulus package are over. I have a whole video covering this on my channel, but Drake used to basically just be able to hop on a feature, whether it was a hook or a verse, and that entire song would just sound like a Drake song essentially, and it would become a hit very easily. He was creating careers out of thin air with guys like McConan or Blockboy JB just from putting a verse on their records. But nowadays, when Drake features on your record, it doesn't seem to have that same sort of impact. And for a while now, a lot of Drake's features have sounded very forgettable. Drake hasn't been responsible for another artist's song becoming a hit just because he featured on it for many, many years at this point. And while it was an incredible thing to witness the Drake stimulus package back in the 2010s, I don't think numbers and his incredible features are something he should be flexing at this point when he's not even confident enough to put records on streaming platforms due to the expectation that the numbers won't be strong, and most importantly considering the fact that all his recent features have been floppy. There's no need for Drake to be flexing his feature run or the Drake stimulus package until he actually goes back to giving us incredible features that turn into hit songs. Drake continues to drop some more subliminals in this record, and this is when it really gets directed a little more towards Kendrick. He raps, "This is the moment I know they've been praying on, try to knock the boy off, but F it, I'm staying on." Obviously a reference to the many diss tracks that Kendrick released in an attempt to assassinate Drake's character. And Drake continues to rap, "Oliver keeps sending me slaps to go crazy on, 40 keeps saying it's time to be patient, it's so many people we're turning the tables on, Capo got plans but we'll save that for later on, Hush'll keeps saying that they know they played it wrong." Here he's basically saying his main producer and right-hand man 40 is telling him to be patient, i.e., stop dropping so many records, take a break, make people miss you and come back with something a little more calculated. But then he says Capo got plans, we'll save that for later on. He's referring to himself as the Capo, basically the head of the mob. And he's emphasizing here that he has some sort of big plan of attack that he's about to come with, and that all the guys we're dissing are gonna soon regret it. Then he goes on to rap, "Kendrick Lamar really sucks, but he called me a PDF file, so now I'm out of luck. He put my career in a chokehold, it's now stuck. I was flying high like an owl, but now I'm sinking underwater like a duck." I'm joking again, he didn't say any of that, but drop a like if you like my bars. I think if Drake came with that type of humility and humbleness, we might actually forgive him at this point. But yeah, Drake continues rapping, "All the stuff that they don't address to my face, I can't be showing no stress on my face," which is ironic because we recently saw a picture of Drake at Michael Rubin's white party and he looked like he aged 40 years in 4 months. It was honestly kind of sad to see. It looks like Drake needs a little more surgery to pick up those lines and those wrinkles off his face. Then on the second verse, Drake raps, "I don't get sleepy off no melatonin, my therapist put in a 30-day notice, cause I keep on talking about beefing and business and money and women, it's no diagnosis." And this was actually a reference to Kendrick Lamar's line on Meet the Grams where he raps, "Soliciting women problems, therapy's a lovely start, but I suggest some ayahuasca, strip the ego from the bottom." He was talking to Drake here basically saying yeah, therapy's a good start to deal with all the problems that you have, but it really comes down from your ego and you need to strip that in order to actually heal and grow as a human. Drake flips that by basically saying no, I'm so eager to keep beefing, to keep focusing on that and focus on other toxic things like women and money, so much so to the point where my therapist literally had to quit on me. And again, I think it's another one of those bars that sound like Drake is kind of out of touch. Yeah, he's trying to sound hungry here. He's trying to sound confident. I can't stop talking about beef to my therapist, so she had to quit on me because I'm just going crazy. But no, you just took the biggest L of your career and it came from a guy who was basically calling you out for not having an identity of your own and for the culture being tired of the way that you manipulate and cosplay and poison your fan base with horrible subject matter and a horrible persona. So instead of doubling down on that persona, maybe you should try to actually show some real growth and reflection in your lyrics at this point instead of continuously focusing on money and beef and women and all these toxic things. Especially beef and women, because it seems like you're approaching those things like a minor, if you know what I mean. Yeah, he's doubling down. He's saying they emptied the clip, swap it out, and I came back reloaded. I'm just so happy that guys who envied and held that stuff in got to finally show it. I'm over the moon. Yeah, we'll see you boys soon. I'm spreading my wings. I hop out cocoon. Cocoon could be in reference to Kendrick Lamar's To Pimp a Butterfly record, but in essence what he's saying here is, we'll see you boys soon. I reloaded my clip and I'm ready for round 2. You guys couldn't take me down. You tried your best. You sent 20 different rappers at me and I'm still here. I'm happy you guys got to show your true colors and everyone who was envious of me got to finally show it, and I'm reloaded and we'll see you guys soon. Dangerous game he's playing here. Dangerous game is all I could say, really. He did this when Kendrick Lamar was silent after he dropped push-ups. He proceeded to drop tailor-made freestyle. He was trolling all over Instagram. His final bars before Kendrick Lamar dropped Euphoria and then proceeded to drop 4 other massive records was, nah, not this time, you're following through. He was egging Kendrick on, begging him to drop, and it seems like he's trying to bait him again right here. He's taking Kendrick's silence for granted right now. Kendrick Lamar dropped Not Like Us. It became a massive record, and ever since then he's been posted up either working on his album or just enjoying his life, and he's been silent. We haven't heard anything else from him since. I think Drake takes that sort of silence as weakness, and because of that he's taking advantage and basically dropping as much as he could and acting confident on all these records, showing like, look, you guys didn't destroy me and now you're back to being silent and I gave you all your hits and I'm ready for round 2 because you guys didn't kill me yet. And he emphasizes this by continuously sneak dissing on his next song, Circadian Rhythm, which even the title is a reference to Kendrick Lamar. Circadian rhythms are the physical, mental, and behavioral changes that an organism experiences over a 24-hour cycle. What this means is a circadian rhythm is basically like an internal clock that kind of tells us when to eat, wake up, sleep, work, basically function as a human. And Kendrick is saying he lives in circadian rhythms of a shooting star, like he's not on the same circadian rhythm as a regular human. This could also be a double entendre, as when he says shooting star, he could be talking about literally shooting the star being Drake. So yeah, Drake named his newest record Circadian Rhythm, with the second title for the track being called The Language Part 2. If you guys didn't know, The Language Part 1 was a record off of Drake's Nothing Was the Same album, and that song was full of sneak disses aimed at Kendrick. It was a response to Kendrick Lamar's song Control, where he called out Drake saying that he's better than Drake, trying to steal his fan base. He also called out half the rap game. I'm sure you guys have heard that record already, but basically The Language was a response to that record where Drake was saying, I don't know why they've been lying, but your stuff is not that inspiring. Because at the time, Kendrick had just come out with his first album, Good Kid, Mad City. He was being praised as the savior of rap, and his music was extremely inspirational, but Drake was trying to basically discredit that here. We won't get too deep into all the sneak disses on The Language Part 1, but instead we'll focus on The Language Part 2. I might make a full breakdown of all the subliminals that Drake and Kendrick have ever thrown at each other throughout their entire careers, but we'll save that for a separate video. But yeah, Drake starts this record off with more out-of-touch bars. He raps, you sent an 8-minute voice note straight from the heart. I reply like, yeah, whatever, when can you come get your stuff? And these bars aren't in reference to Kendrick, but they're just extremely immature and directly reflect everything that Kendrick was calling Drake out for in his diss records. He was saying that Drake sleeps with immature women, low-value women, minors, but we don't know if that's true, but minors or not, the women that Drake surrounds himself with are just Instagram models, women who sleep around in the industry, not women with substance necessarily, and Drake has also been known to treat these women poorly. And he emphasizes that here by rapping these like high school-like bars where he's saying like, oh yeah, you sent me a voice note where you're pouring your heart out, but I'm just replying back like, yo, when you coming to get your stuff, get out of my house already. Emphasizes Kendrick's bar even more when he rapped 37, but you're living like a 7-year-old. And Drake again feels extremely disconnected from the current state of the culture or the culture's current opinion on him. On the hook of this record where he raps, rap game like my sleeping habits cause how am I still up? He also raps, how many funeral dates they planned for me and I dodged it like the truck. But it's like, you're not up. You didn't dodge these funerals. You tried your hardest to fight against them, but Kendrick put the biggest stain on your career that we've ever seen you have. And yeah, you're quote unquote up in terms of like, yeah, your old records are still being streamed, but you were the biggest rapper in the world from a streaming perspective. You were the highest selling rapper basically of all time, maybe aside from Eminem. It doesn't take away from the fact that there has been a fall from grace. It doesn't take away from the fact that if Kendrick put out an album today on the same day as you, he would likely sell more than you would. So instead of talking about how you're up and how these guys tried to kill you but they couldn't, do some actual reflecting on your records. Show the fans why you're still up. Like, I respect him for continuously trying to fight, but these bars just sound delusional. Or it's like you think the audience is dumb, like Kendrick said, and you're trying to wipe the memory or the history of that L that you just took from our minds by saying that you're up or that they haven't killed you. Like, yes, there will always be people who will listen to new Drake records. There's no doubt about that. Drake will still likely have many more hits for the rest of his career. However, that doesn't take away from the stain that Kendrick has left on his legacy. It doesn't take away from the curtain that Kendrick peeled back to show us who Drake has been this whole time. And these records that Drake is trying to make all triumphant, trying to make all victorious as if he's, still up, while simultaneously being too scared to actually release them on streaming platforms in fear of potentially flopping, shows you that he's not truly confident. He doesn't truly feel like he's up. And Kendrick even told him, you can't Tootsie slide your way out of this one. Meaning, like, you can't just drop hits to get out of this like you did with Pusha T. You gotta actually rap. You gotta actually reflect on all the things that I said about your character throughout this beef and show the fans why you deserve to have that top spot. And in my opinion, he's not going to be able to do that with these throwaways. A lot of these songs, they have bad hooks, lazy writing. Like, the energy's there. He sounds confident. He sounds hungry. But he's talking like he didn't just take the biggest L of his career. He's talking like he's ready for round 2, but his actual rapping on this record is showing that he's not even in the state lyrically that he was in 10 years prior in his career. And I think another reason why he's dropping these records on Instagram is to try and kind of humanize himself, like bring himself down to a level where it doesn't seem like everything is so forced by the label. He's not releasing these, massive singles with music videos onto streaming platforms and doing it in such a corporate type of way. He's trying to do it in a more unconventional way where he can connect to his fans on a more personal level. I mean, he also attempted to drop another batch of content where he's showing his recording process for albums like Nothing Was the Same or behind the scenes touring footage of him and Kanye West. And it's great to see this stuff. It shows that Drake, really does have a hand in the production and the creation of his music. It shows he has a role in the writing process. The content with Kanye showed that Kanye was, shouting Drake out as the reason why him and Jay-Z felt threatened to make Watch the Throne because Drake was putting such a competitive edge onto them. It's reminding us about the massive, amazing career that Drake has had in the past and what we loved him for. And Drake hasn't been the underdog in a while. So for him to kind of drop these records very nonchalantly, not really care about the numbers, just throw them as loosies, in a way, it's him humanizing himself. But at the same time, these records sound delusional. The hooks sound lazy. The sounds aren't anything innovative. If he's not using a flow that we've heard him use before, then he's imitating Playboi Carti. If he's not talking about this beef as if he's still up or as if he hasn't lost, then he's just rapping immature bars about the women that he's with. There's no real growth here. So for someone who's been tired of Drake for the last couple of years, who's been tired of Drake constantly putting out tons and tons of music that either sounds the same or touches on the same sort of subject matter, these records don't do anything except for emphasize the fact that Drake is in a state in his career where he's struggling to mature or evolve. And speaking of Atlanta rappers, Lil Yachty was also featured on the original version of the third record that Drake released in this new bundle called SOD. Ironically, he released all these new records on Lil Yachty's birthday, and he took Lil Yachty's verse off of the track. There's been rumors that Lil Yachty and him are now beefing after Lil Yachty made comments about the Kendrick and Drake beef, saying that, basically implying that Kendrick won without really stating it, saying that Not Like Us was like the best moment of the whole beef, not really defending his boy. Then he unfollowed Drake on Instagram, and this SOD record, Lil Yachty actually leaked it online on Kai Cenat's stream initially because him and Drake couldn't get the sample cleared. Drake, for whatever reason, has decided to strip Lil Yachty off the record, take it for his own, and just put it on his Instagram page. And according to academics, he's actually in the works of creating a music video for this record as well. It was another example of Drake kind of premiering a song unofficially, in this case on Kai Cenat's stream, and given the positive public feedback from the record, he decides to now officially push it by doing a music video for it. And I think for me, the biggest problem with all of these records, again, is that he's just talking about a whole lot of nothing here. I mean, it's interesting how confident he's talking and how hungry he is for a second round in this entire beef, but he sounds delusional while he's talking about it, like he hasn't realized the massive L that he took or the massive opponent that Kendrick Lamar truly is that he's about to go up against again by, continuously poking the bear. These records don't sound like big enough hits and aren't touching on exciting enough or mature enough subject matter that they could be deemed as a real comeback record. But I do think this is Drake's strategy to kind of gear us up for the big official hit single that he's gonna end up dropping on streaming platforms. He's done this before. With Hotline Bling, he actually initially released that song just on his website and on SoundCloud, but given the massive amount of love that that record received, he ended up dropping it on streaming platforms. I think it's gonna be the same thing with this. He's gonna test the waters with all these records, see which ones hit, which ones don't, and change his game plan kind of as he goes based off public feedback. Like, I think if one of these songs becomes a massive hit or like people just absolutely love it, it's unanimously loved, he's just going to drop it on streaming platforms and kind of take that same route he took when he dropped Scorpion after the Pusha T beef, where he just focuses on making hits. But there's a couple differences here. Let me explain why. First of all, the biggest problem he has is that unlike a Hotline Bling or a God's Plan or In My Feelings or Mob Ties, like, these records aren't those same type of comeback records that we heard from Drake in the past. The second problem is that after his beef with Pusha T, Drake went on to stay silent essentially until he dropped Scorpion. And once he did that, he gave us 25 records on that album with tons and tons of hits. And it was that body of work as a whole that made us forget about the Pusha T beef. Not necessarily forget, but that project was big enough that it distracted the general public because it sold so well and had so many hits that Drake just kind of seemed like he was on top of the game again. This time around, with the release of each new record, it emphasizes to us more and more how Drake has lost his spot at the top. None of these records are sticking. None of these records are unanimous hits. None of these records are being acclaimed as like some of Drake's best work in years. And I really think that's what he needs if he wants people to stop thinking that his sound is stale and that it's gotten old. And academics made a really good point in that, the losers of beefs don't usually have their careers, ended to them, right? Or it doesn't usually take a massive, massive hit on their commercial success. Like after Quavo and Chris Brown, or Meg Thee Stallion and Nicki Minaj, no matter who you determine the winner or loser of that beef, all of them were still able to go on to have the same success that they had before that beef. Same thing with like Nas and Jay-Z. The only rapper we saw that truly had a massive fall off and was never able to return to the top of the game after a beef that they had with a different rapper was Ja Rule with 50 Cent. And it really all comes down to truly how you're perceived by the fans. Part of your music working is people thinking that you're, hot, or that you're cool, or that you're in the good graces of the public. Kendrick didn't reveal any new crazy information about Drake that already wasn't available publicly. He just painted the picture of Drake as being an awful person. He tarnished the reputation of who Drake is as a character so badly that, someone who was once considered to be this untouchable figure within hip-hop, all of that person's flaws have now been laid out on the table for the entire world to just digest. It was the same thing with Ja Rule, and if Drake doesn't come back with some sort of remorse or self-reflection or growth within his music, and instead just sounds delusional or plays into a lot of the lines that Kendrick spit on his diss tracks, then he won't be in the good graces of the public. And if he's going to attach himself to the numbers, then this is not the right play either, because A, it's showing he's not confident enough to drop on streaming platforms in fear of flopping, but more importantly, he's done that before with his Versace remix, with Hotline Bling, with The Motion, with Trust Issues. All these songs were never released onto streaming platforms, or at the time iTunes. You couldn't go buy them, you just listened to them for free, but it didn't matter. They still had that same sort of influence and impact because they were unanimously loved. They were amazing records. They were loved so much so to the point that he was forced to basically put some of these songs onto streaming platforms. But with these records, it's not the case. His subject matter is not evolving. He's not talking about anything of substance here. He sounds delusional. The hooks don't hit the same way his older hooks did. The production is honestly great. I can't say anything wrong about the production. The sample on Circadian Rhythms is amazing. I love the beat on Super Soak. The energy on No Face is great. But that's the problem with these songs, is they're all just good. There's nothing that truly stands out about them. There's no evolution from Drake on them. And even with guys like Youngboy or Future or Lil Wayne, like these guys were known for just dropping a bunch of mixtapes scattered. They weren't necessarily on streaming platforms. They would just drop a bunch of music, flood the market, and they were still some of the biggest rappers in the game at one point in time, just because of how amazing their music was and the quantity of music that they were releasing. It didn't matter how or where they were releasing it. It just mattered that we were constantly getting flooded with new music from them. I think Drake is trying to take that approach again to humanize himself. He's kind of releasing these things like mixtapes, but the quality of the music is just not there enough for us to look at this as a true comeback from Drake. So unless he's doing this to, plot for the release of his massive official comeback single on streaming platforms, I'm not really sure the direction he's trying to take with this whole thing, but that could be what he's trying to do as well. Just play into the mysteriousness, the unpredictability. He's always been so calculated his entire career. Maybe at this point, he doesn't want to be calculated anymore. He just kind of wants to release music impulsively and plan his next move as it happens, not really be prepared for anything necessarily, but just kind of live in the moment. But I think that raises an even bigger problem, which is that the way he's talking on these records is just putting the opportunity right in Kendrick Lamar's hand to smack the hell out of him once again. He's really asking for it here. And he did the same exact thing back in 2018 with Pusha T. Pusha T dissed him, Drake dropped out of the beef, then he proceeded to drop Scorpion, his comeback album, and it was riddled with sneak disses against Pusha T. Pusha T's response to that is that all of these subliminal disses sounded stale. They sounded like things we've heard before. There was no evolution, which is, again, what we're getting now, in my opinion. But the difference is I think Pusha T ignored those things because he thought the disses sounded stale. And he's like, you officially dropped out of the beef, so you could subliminally diss me however much you want, but you admitted to the world that you were scared of that direct confrontation. So for that reason, I'm not going to respond to any of your subliminal disses. But I think Kendrick hates Drake a lot more than Pusha T does, and I don't think he's going to take these subliminals lightly. I mean, he said it himself on Euphoria. He said, I hate the way that you sneak this. If I catch flight, it's going to be direct. So who knows? There's rumors that Kendrick is gearing up to drop his next album. Maybe we'll get some Drake disses on there. Drake is acting like he's ready for this. Maybe he's got that red button that he's finally ready to press. Maybe he's come a little more prepared. He's planned out some real full-fledged diss records this time around that can actually do some damage to Kendrick Lamar, and that's why he's talking so confidently on these new records. But again, I think it's going to unanimously go to Kendrick if they do go for round two. I think out of all these three songs, SOD to me is the best one overall. It does sound like a throwaway, but it does sound like the most authentic Drake record. He's doing that smooth melodic flow. The beat is calm, it's bouncy. I like it better without Lil Yachty. He's not talking about the beef on this record, which is kind of refreshing. He's keeping it light. Circadian Rhythm has the best production in my opinion. The sample while he sings the hook of that record is amazing. Speaking of hooks, though, I really don't like the hooks on No Face or on Circadian Rhythm. I think what's scarier than anything else about Drake's potential fall off is that I feel like he's lost the ability to make really strong hooks that he used to have back in the early 2010s. But I guess we're going to have to wait and see if the Drake stimulus package will ever come back, if he'll ever start delivering those beautiful hooks again, if he'll actually go back for round 2 with Kendrick. Let me know in the comments if you guys think they will, if you even want to see them go back and forth again, who you think is going to win. And I did tell you that at the end of this video, I'll reveal the answers to the quiz. So what do Drake and Kendrick Lamar have in common? Well, they both broke the streaming record for fastest song to hit 700 million streams on Spotify. Drake broke it with God's Plan, and Kendrick Lamar just broke it with his diss record aimed at Drake, Not Like Us. Beautiful to see hip-hop winning the way it is, and as much as I don't love these records, it is refreshing to hear new music from Drake. I'd love to hear some from Kendrick Lamar as well. I'm sure it'll be better than this, but I am sure we'll also get at least 10 new Drake records before we get a single Kendrick Lamar record. So let me know what you guys want to hear next, and I'll catch y'all in the next one.